Namaste, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bharatvaarta podcast. There's always been a perennial debate on freedom of speech. While some hold it sacrosanct for progress in modern societies as such, there are others who believe it comes with just responsibilities attached to it. We're, of course, talking about this in the light of recent controversy around a book on the Delhi riots by authors Monica Arora, Sonali Chitalkar, and Prerna Malhotra, and their publisher Bloomsbury India. Joining me today for this discussion, we have two very popular commentators. We have Shefali Vaidya, who is based out of Pune. She's an author and speaker. She's also a fellow at the Ananta Leadership Program and a convener at the Indic Academy. Thank you so much for joining us, Shefali ji.
Thank you, Roshan. Thank you for inviting me.
We have Abhijit Majumder, who is a journalist based out of Delhi. He's written for such publications as the Mail Today of the India Today Group, Times of India, First Post, Daily O, and many others. It's great to have you, Abhijit ji.
Thanks, Roshan. And hi, Shefali.
Hi, Abhijit.
Hi.
He expects us to fight.
We should live up to his expectations.
Well, I mean, it's entirely up to you guys, I suppose. I think, yeah. So let's see what's in store. So maybe, I mean, to begin things, Shefali ji, if you could just summarize the recent events that have happened with respect to the Delhi riots book and the controversy surrounding Bloomsbury India, that would be really helpful for our audience.
I guess by now many of the people that your podcast is aimed at, they already know what exactly happened, but I'll give you some background. So basically, we all know that Bloomsbury India is a large publishing house which has operations in many countries, in UK, in India, in Australia. And they have published books. They have published books of all kinds of ideology. Actually, they have published books. They have published Shantanu Gupta's book on Yogi Adityanath, which is their bestseller. They've published Sanjay Dikshit. They've also published a whole lot of writers of the other left ideological disposition. That is not the point. That is the job of a publishing house, right? Publishing house's job is to identify ideas and that they think that the books would sell, and then make sure that the book finally comes out so that the reader gets a choice which books to read or which books not to read. But in this case, post what happened in Delhi, the whole CAA, NRC agitation, as well as the riots that happened in Delhi, Bloomsbury India decided to publish two books. One is on CAA and NRC agitation. It is by the activist who took part in that Shaheen Bagh agitation, and it was about how it is on the right side of democracy and all of that. And they also contracted Monica Arora, Prerna Malhotra, and Chitalkar. These three ladies were part of a fact-finding committee who had done a report on the Delhi riots and what led to the Delhi riots and how exactly the whole controversy and conspiracy took place. So they had already published this report in the public domain. And I think after seeing this report, Bloomsbury approached them for this book because they thought that it will be a good book. Meanwhile, Op India had also done a 350-page report on Delhi riots and what exactly led to it. That is also out for sale on Kindle. But when Bloomsbury contracted these three writers, they obviously went through the process that they are supposed to do as a publishing house. They must have written a proper contract with them. They went through this whole process of inviting a manuscript, going through it, legally vetting it, suggesting any changes, deletions, whatever. And finally, after the final manuscript, they had decided to go ahead with the publication in the first week of September. They had even published 100 copies of the book, 100 print copies of the book, which are with the writer Monica Arora. And they had started accepting pre-orders on Amazon, Bloomsbury India. And then what happened was the authors decided to do a pre-release function, which was a private pre-release function, which they are entitled to do, by the way. And they had called Kapil Mishra as the chief guest for it. And there were Vivek Agnihotri, who's also another writer, upcoming writer with Bloomsbury, and Nupur Sharma of Op India as guests there. Now, this function somehow got into the radar of the custodians of, the self-declared custodians of free speech on the left. And they said, how can a publishing house like Bloomsbury publish their book in the presence of Kapil Mishra? Now, Bloomsbury could have said that this is a private function of the authors and they have not organized it, which is fair enough. I mean, you divorce the function, the pre-release function from the book. But Bloomsbury didn't do that. And Bloomsbury was aware of this function because the flyers of this function were out there on social media since the 21st of August. Bloomsbury did not really object to it. But suddenly, when a whole lot of Bloomsbury international authors got activated, like some Camilla person, I forget her full name, and William Dalrymple, of course, and Atish Tasir and everybody, the whole left cabal got activated, and they put a lot of pressure on Bloomsbury UK, which in turn leaned on Bloomsbury India. So net what happened was barely half an hour before the function, before Monica Arora and everyone, they were all set. Everything was announced. Everything was, ready to go live. That's when Bloomsbury India called the writer and said, sorry, we are backing out from publishing your book because we do not support the guests that you have called for this function. Now, there are several issues here as I see it. I'll just put it out there. First of all, it is not for Bloomsbury to decide after they have given a contract with the writer, after they have gone through with multiple iterations of the manuscript, and after they have suggested changes and the writers have done it and they've started taking pre-orders to renege on the contract. That is a breach of contract straight out. Secondly, if you didn't like the function or if you didn't like the guest of that function for whatever reason, you could have simply said that we disassociate with this function. We've got nothing to do with it. If you have a problem with your logo being used, then talk to them and say that don't use our logo. That I can understand and say that this is not our official function. We don't have anything to do with it. Tomorrow, if I publish a book with the publisher and if I organize a private function, I'm entitled to call whomever I want as a chief guest. That is my right. The publisher cannot say that you can call only these guests or not these guests if they have not paid for the promotion function or if they have not played any part in the promotion function, right? But this happened, and this kind of censorship, this kind of cancel culture, which happened because of pressure of a certain ideological disposition, is probably the worst thing that have happened to the Indian publishing industry, particularly English publishing industry. Because as it is, we know that the large publishing houses have been publishing very one-sided books, very one-sided mediocre books, I would like to say, for years now. But it's only now, because of social media, because of the awareness that there are other people also who have a lot of writing talent, that these publishing houses had started approaching writers from all ideological dispositions. As long as you have a good book in you, ideology. It is for the writer to decide, it is for the reader to decide whether the book is good or bad, whether to buy it or not, whether to pulp it or not, whether to make sure that the book becomes a bestseller or whether the book just languishes and sells 800, 900 copies and everybody forgets about it. Which is what, all these big writers, big journalists and whatever, their books are published. They are vanity publications. Ask them how many books that Sagarika Ghosh's Indira Gandhi book, I'm telling you with authority that book probably has not even sold more than 1,000 copies. Who remembers that book? That book is probably languishing in bunches in somebody's storehouses. But that book was a vanity project. But the point is, what Bloomsbury India did here is they took a clear side and they denied a writer the right to freedom of expression after having contracted with the writers. The point here is, if you didn't do your due diligence, then you should have decided. The point to decide whether you're going to publish that book or not was at the manuscript stage. But when you've crossed that stage, when you've even taken out books in print, when you started taking pre-orders, you cannot use a flimsy excuse like the authors have called somebody whom we don't like as an excuse to say that we'll not publish your whole book and we'll back out. That is just not done. It's legally, morally, ethically, every which way, it's unprofessional and it is an insult to freedom of expression. That is where things stand, basically. Secondly, I have a problem. I have a personal problem. I don't know, maybe Abhijit might have a different point of view on this. They said that just because you called Kapil Mishra, you are some sort of intellectually untouchable. So we are not going to touch you. We are not going to give you respectability. We are not going to give you a forum or a platform. We are going to deplatform you or whatever. But what has Kapil Mishra done? Is he arrested? Is there a FIR against him? Is there any
Correct.
criminal complaint against him? No, whatever you may say that he said, and you may hold him responsible for whatever. Does it mean he actually is responsible? No. Tomorrow, if you call Tahir Hussain, who is actually in custody, who has criminal charges against him of actively abetting Delhi riots. Tomorrow, if Tahir Hussain is called for the Shaheen Bagh book publication, nobody will have a problem with that. But Kapil Mishra, who doesn't even have a criminal report against him, he's being treated like an untouchable. So, what is this issue? I mean, why is a publishing house which is supposed to be a champion of freedom of expression, which is supposed to identify authors and which is supposed to find good books, why is it taking sides ideologically? That is the basic problem. That is the basic issue here.
Right. And to be entirely clear, you're opposed to both the spirit and the method of it, right?
That's right. Yes.
Okay. So Abhijit,
This is cancel culture at its worst.
Right, right. So Abhijit, just drawing from what Shefali ji mentioned, which is this whole cartelization of the publishing industry, so to speak, right? I mean, publishing of one set of ideas, one set of ideologies, or whatever it is, and people may have different viewpoints as to what set of ideas get preference over the others and why that could be, right? Do you see that as an actual reality in today's India? And also, what do you think? What do you think will happen going forward? Do you think that that will change?
Yeah. See, Roshan, I actually agree entirely with Shefali even on the Kapil Mishra thing. The thing is that this is not about today's India. This has been happening for 70 independent years, 72 years of our independence, 73 years of our independence. This has happened. And why there was no brouhaha was that it was a fantastic, you know, uh, fantastic arrangement where the censorship was so total, so complete, aided by the governments in power, that nobody even raised a question. Why is this happening now? Because that voice for the last 6, 7, 8 years has been growing stronger and stronger and stronger. This whole thing of so while you talk about freedom of speech, I would say freedom of speech is a much question that can be addressed much later. First of all, let's talk about democratic from social media in publishing, in cinema, books, campuses. This democratization of speech has not yet happened, but it has started to happen. Some, as Shefali said, that some of these publishing houses, ironically, Bloomsbury, have been the first ones to actually approach Indic, Dharmic, for the lack of a better word, right of center voices to publish them. Bloomsbury, India. I'm talking about Bloomsbury, India. In fact, when I had a book proposal sent to an agent, to Penguin, HarperCollins, all these Aleph, all these publishing houses, 2 years ago, all of them said that this will, the agent came back to me and said that, Abhijit, all of them think that this book will do very well, but they don't agree with your personal ideology. They're extremely suspicious of. They do not want to publish it. It is Bloomsbury who then approached me for the book, and I'm doing a book for them. But this has actually alarmed the ecosystem. I mean, imagine the level of entitlement tyranny that, you know, I would say only 10% of this has started happening, and they are completely alarmed. They want to stop it. Look at how people have been talking. This Atish Tasir and others. Raghu Kannad the other day said that, Dalrymple wanted to give platform to two RSS leaders to speak. And, I, among others, many others, tried to stop that. I mean, how can you give platform to this kind of people. So they are proudly saying that that censorship is, they
Yeah.
are admitting to that censorship. Now the point is that there are two kinds of censorship. One is the visible censorship, the active censorship. But the much bigger and far more dangerous censorship is the invisible censorship that happens, which is the act of, there is an act of commission, and then there is the act of omission. Silently, the great books that have never been published or will never see the light of day, or have been published by very little known, badly edited small publishing houses, is because of the latter, which is invisible censorship.
Hmm.
That denial, complete denial of space to somebody. So,
Right.
and that invisible censorship, and also there are two more things about censorship, the nature of censorship, and why it is happening in India now, is that there is one thing about a country censoring free speech. There is another thing about pan international, pan global networks censoring free speech in a nation. I think India is seeing a lot of the latter.
Hmm.
Again, look
That
at
is true.
Dalrymple, look at Atif Tasir, look at all these people, Khalid Hosseini, or well, Khalid has of course denied it, but Karina, uh,
Camila something.
Camila, so they are, none of them are Indians. Look at all
Yeah.
the people who write letters when something in India happens. From J.K. Rowling to, there's a cabal that constantly keeps on chipping away at freedom of speech, builds narratives worldwide. They are part of one seamless international network at work, and this is the more frightening censorship at play. This is a
Right.
way more frightening, and this, the whole weight of this comes down on us through other very very silent and censorship on Facebook, censorship on Twitter, censorship on Google search, censorship. All these are foreign, all these are multinational foreign entities working in India above the law of the land.
Right.
That is actually a very good point. And let me add here, because I am also a contracted writer with Bloomsbury, just
Yeah.
as Abhijit is. And I have been in touch with the people who, the editors and whoever in Bloomsbury, India. And even Monica Arora has confirmed this with me. Monica Arora, I did an interview with Monica Arora on the day this thing happened. And she had said that till 3:30 she didn't get a call, right, from Bloomsbury, India. And even when she got a call, the person who called her from Bloomsbury, India was extremely apologetic. And he said that even we don't know what to do, we don't know what to say. The pressure has come from Bloomsbury, UK, and the pressure must have been tremendous. And as Abhijit has said, that the pressure is from people who are outside, who either have a nationality that's different from India's, or who are settled outside of India, and who are exercising this pressure on a publishing house that is supposed to be working in India and that is supposed to be deferring to India's laws of freedom of speech and expression. So this is basically an extra constitutional pressure that is being supplied from outside India by people who are not Indians. And now the sad, not sad, it's actually tragicomic. So now people like Atish Tasir are saying that, see, we never asked for a ban on the book. You're free to publish the book. But our publishing houses, the international publishing houses, they're not going to touch the book. You can have your little publishing houses who can publish this book. We don't have a problem with that. It's not a ban. We are all for freedom of expression. So this is nothing but intellectual apartheid. This is like, doesn't it remind you of the America of 60s, where people in the southern states said that we don't mind black people going to school, but they will not come to our school. We don't mind black people traveling somewhere, but they can't sit in our buses. We don't mind black people attending colleges, but they can't attend our colleges. Let them have their small colleges. It's the exact same thing, right? And it's the exact same thing that these freedom of speech type of people जो ठेकेदार हैं freedom of expression के, वो हमेशा बोलते हैं कि you Indians are racist, you Indians are you indulge in caste prejudice. What is this? This is nothing but intellectual apartheid. You are saying that these unwashed masses, how dare they come and sit next to me? How dare they come and sit next to me in a panel in a lit fest? How dare they can compete for the same intellectual awards or literary awards that I or my cronies have been getting for 70 years? This cannot happen. They do not like the old order being challenged.
Right. So that's a very important point that both of you make, which is that this is not even a selective surfacing of ideas indigenously. It's not even by our own people, but it's by foreign actors and foreign elements who may have some other vested interests that may not be aligned with our own interests here, right? Whichever side of the spectrum it may belong to here. So, how do we change this paradigm? So we've seen two different approaches. Shefali ji, you have come out and said that, you will not partner with Bloomsbury India, on your ongoing project, forthcoming projects. Abhijit, you have said that you will continue to work with Bloomsbury India, and I see merit on both sides, right? So on the one hand, I mean, I see that, by informing, by sort of telling Bloomsbury something like this, Shefali ji, you are kind of inducing a penalty to them that they will not get good authors or good voices signed up if they continue their behavior. At the same time, Abhijit, you are also encouraging them to look beyond their safe spaces, so to speak, and seek out authors from opposing or other ideologies as well. So I see merits with...
I'm just saying that I am not willing to cede any space.
Yeah, exactly.
Any space that we have gotten right now.
Yeah.
It may be in their kitchen, it may be in their drawing room, it may be in their bedroom. We are not going to cede that space.
Right. So I see merits on both sides. Maybe if you could...
Yeah. I want to say something here. And even though I have decided, my personal decision is to withdraw from Bloomsbury, from this book, I totally understand where Abhijit is coming from, and I understand why he's taking the stand that he's taking. But at the same time, the fact that 14 best-selling authors and some drawn to Bloomsbury India, that itself has put a lot of pressure on not just Bloomsbury India, but it's a message that has been given to all international publishing houses in India. This is unprecedented, right? Bloomsbury also probably did not anticipate that there would be this much of a pushback. They probably thought, हाँ 2 दिन outrage होगा social media पे, सब लोग चिल्लाएंगे, and after that everybody will forget about it. We'll quietly bury this book and move on. That is exactly what they would have thought. That is why they took this decision, because this is an unprecedented decision. No publishing house would even want to take a decision like half an hour before a book release function. It reflects badly on them as well. But the fact that so many writers and some of their long-standing writers, some of the writers whose books have gone into multiple editions, have said that, you know what, we will not accept this, and we respect a writer's freedom of expression, and we stand in solidarity with the writer. So that has sent a very strong message, and that message is gone. That message has gone not just to Bloomsbury India, but that message has gone to Penguin, that message has gone to Wesleyan, that message has gone to every publishing house that is in India. And they realized that they cannot take writers for granted anymore. That is why that message was necessary. That is why that message means a lot, because that message will make Bloomsbury realize that it cannot do this in the future. See, in the future also, when Bloomsbury wants to identify writers from different ideological bents of mind, it will be a lot more cautious, right, in the future. And I hear Abhijit's point that Bloomsbury India has actually been a pretty ideologically neutral publishing house, which is true. They have published writers like David Frawley. They have published writers like Sanjay Dixit, Sandeep Dev, Nityanand Mishra, everybody, even my book was supposed to be it will be published, but we'll talk about that later. But the point is, Bloomsbury has invested a lot in finding, Bloomsbury India I'm talking about, has invested, to be fair to them, has invested a lot in identifying new talent, in making them write, and in trying to get good books written from them. That is true, and I will give them that. But the point is, this particular action that they did under pressure and deplatforming a writer is something that they probably thought will fly under the radar. It will be at the most create outrage for 2-3 days, and after that everything will be forgotten, as it has been happening many times. But that didn't happen, and you know what really happened, right? The book went to Garuda Publications, and in one night it sold more than 15,000 copies. That is a message that all publishing houses have got. They may pretend to be very brave and blasé about it, and they would say that, oh, we understand this or whatever, but the message is gone. Everybody has got the message. So I also understand from where Abhijit is coming from, and he's saying that I'm not going to cede any intellectual space that we have got after a lot of heartache, after a lot of fighting. So I don't grudge him that. I am not going to ask him how dare he not withdraw his book or whatever. That is his decision, and I respect it, and I will buy that book and I'll read it also. That's not the point. But the point is, publishing house should get the message that they cannot take writers of a particular ideological dispensation for granted, and they cannot treat these writers like stepchildren. Ki haan, we doing you a favor by giving you a chance to publish a book with us, but that favor is like, we can take it back anytime we want. That is the attitude that Bloomsbury has shown in this particular issue. So that cannot happen, and that will not happen also in the future.
Right. Abhijit, your comments?
My thing is, we need to impose a way bigger price on them for this. How dare William Dalrymple's books get sold in India even after this, or published here, or Jaipur Literature Festival is allowed to be held? Why? I mean, you cannot censor. You can't do absolutely this kind of censorship in a nation and then freely operate there. ये नहीं होगा, ये नहीं होना चाहिए. I am really, I am upset that the government has still not taken enough measures to ensure democratization of speech, and has done anything about. I guess the government is anxious not to be called, that you're stemming free speech and all that. So, and also the government, if it tries to be a good boy and just, sit there twiddling their, it's intolerant and fascist. Let me assure you, the only thing is, you cannot, the real intolerant fascist, I think a very heavy price should be imposed on them, and democratically, not through fascist means, but challenging each and every book now that comes up from there.
Yes,
right.
In fact,
so
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. See, Bloomsbury India has taken down Monica Arora's book, right? But they're still going ahead with that Shaheen Bagh publication. They have not said anything about it. They have not said that we're taking down that book also.
Yeah.
That book is full of lies. That book is full of somebody's point of view, somebody's narrative. And it's a propaganda book, basically. But they're still going ahead with that book. And they have told you, okay, there has been a lot of controversy in it, but how dare they publish only one side of the story and not give the readers the right to know the full picture? That is my point.
And every other, not just Bloomsbury India, every single publishers, every single book should now be challenged.
Yes.
So that
was my
William Dalrymple should and William Dalrymple should be told to pack his bags and bye-bye.
He cannot function. Sorry, I mean he should any festival or any book that he is he's associated with, it should not be allowed in India.
Right. So I had a question on weaponization of this cancel culture, right? So we're seeing one type of cancel culture where a bunch of people say that, hey, this is not kosher and you need to get this off, and they're imposing some kind of either social or economic costs on publishers and brands and so on and so forth. Now, you're going to see a part of this happen on the opposing side as well, right? So you might see, maybe a section of the society oppose something that could be construed as anti-dharmic or whatever it is. Do you see that possibility happening at all? And, if that is the case, what do you think would be the impact on the larger intellectual debate and progress as such. Shefali ji, you could
You
take
know,
this.
why should it not happen? Yeah, why should it not happen? Tell me. So these guys, the entire left liberal cabal, who always shed crocodile tears about freedom of expression and how everybody has the right to say whatever they want, they are the ones who have started this cancel culture. They have started this deplatforming people they dislike. They have started this movement, right? So how can they even have a problem with if the other side uses the same tools and say that we don't like this Netflix series, band kar do usko. We don't like this book, band kar do usko.
होना ही
And
है. It should happen.
it should happen. It will happen. See,
It
it
should
can't
happen.
be. It can't just happen. It's not a freedom of expression. It's not a one-way street. It's not that freedom of expression is freedom of your expression to agree only with the leftist point of view, right?
Yeah.
So even if the dharmic side or the indic side or whatever side you call it, so if a web series is insulting our religion or our way of life or our icons, we have every right to protest and say that we do not like it, and then it should be deplatformed. And the right and the left, the so-called champions of freedom of speech, should have no moral right to say anything after this episode, basically.
Yeah.
They have ceded this. They have ceded the moral superiority. They have ceded completely the right to say anything about anything that the Hindus are going to do henceforth.
I totally agree with Shefali, and I can promise you, Roshan, this will happen, and I would love to play a part in this, because what kind of a freedom is this? Is just like secularism is, for them is a one-way street. Freedom of speech, democratization of speech, it doesn't matter to them at all. It's just for them, they want to keep it a one-way street. Well, that is not going to happen. We are going to impose costs on you, just as you are imposing costs on us. In new India, in modern India, it is not going to unchallenged.
Right. So let me ask a very...
And it's already happening.
But let me also assure you, it is not going to happen like Islamist mobs do with Salman Rushdie's book, or today you have seen what's happening in Sweden. It is not going to happen like that.
That way, yes, right.
This will happen within the parameters of law.
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of people in this Bloomsbury episode, they were the other side, that is the left side, which basically were defending Bloomsbury's decision to not go ahead with this book. They were giving the example of Wendy Doniger's book on Hinduism, which was basically pulped by Penguin, saying that, oh, you wanted it that time, so how can you protest against it? But there's a difference there. That book's pulping, that decision was taken after 6 years of legal struggle, and it was a court order that said that Penguin must pulp it, and Penguin chose, after 6 years of fighting it out in the court, Penguin chose to pulp that book because the court asked it. It could have gone to the Supreme Court. It chose not to go to. That is Penguin's decision. But the point is, the whole struggle was legal. It took 6 years of fight by Dinanath Batra. It took tremendous monetary costs. It took tremendous mental price that he had to pay for it. And if a court says pulp the book, because the court sees merit in the plea, right? So this is a legal decision. So you cannot compare Will Dalrymple or a Camilla someone or a Khalid Hosseini or somebody sitting outside India pressurizing Bloomsbury UK to put pressure on Bloomsbury India to not publish a book. You cannot compare that with the pulping of Wendy Doniger's book, which was taken by Penguin after a legal order. These are two completely different things, basically.
Right. While, that could be one way of approaching this, right? In terms of, let's say capturing space in the intellectual arena as such. Another would be to, encourage more publishing houses like the Garuda Prakashan,
Yes.
for example, which published the book and, apparently has done really well, has sold thousands of copies, as you mentioned. What can we do to encourage that?
15,000 on the first day. 15,000 copies.
Right, 15,000 on the first day. Yeah. So Abhijit ji, what can we do to kind of encourage more of these publishing houses that would not be afraid to publish ideas on either side, perhaps?
Show them sales.
Yeah. Basically show them sales. He's right.
Simple and profound. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Ultimately, and this was told to me by somebody from a publishing house. Okay, I'm not going to name the publishing house, but somebody from a very reputed publishing house is saying that we are not concerned about ideology. He is very candid about it. He said, we are not concerned about ideology, we are concerned about sales. So if a book is going to sell and we know that the book is going to sell, then we don't see any problem in publishing it. And this is free enterprise, right? This is what a publishing house which is operating as a business should be. Should be their only outlook. But the thing is, for 70 years, first of all, India में तो publishing houses ज़्यादा थे ही नहीं. There was one Penguin or one some Tata McGraw-Hill, which was mainly into educational publishing. But so there was a monopoly of one or two publishing houses, and they basically had the same coterie of writers, reviewers, award jury. The same people were the editors. The same people were the publishers. The same people were they had connections with the people who would write reviews. And the same people would sit on the awards jury and decide which book gets an award or which book doesn't get an award. All these books that Penguin has been publishing all this while, has anyone actually read those books? I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about 15 years ago. There's a Bengali writer, Abhijit might know. I forget his name. Amit Rai Chaudhary or something.
Amit Rai.
उसकी किताब पेंगुइन ने पब्लिश की थी. वो किताब मैंने कभी तो फुटपाथ पे लेके पढ़ी थी. Genuine Penguin edition in Bombay. I got it for 25 rupees back then. So I tried to read it. I couldn't go beyond 5 pages. It was such
Raga.
Yes, Afternoon Raga. It was such it was a great book. If you didn't want to fall asleep, you could just take that book and read 25 books and you would be snoring like nobody's business. I don't even know how many copies that book is sold. Today, nobody would touch that writer. There's nothing. There is no originality of language. There is no originality of plot. It's a very mediocre writer. And that's my honest opinion. It's got to do with the publisher or whatever. As a reader and as a voracious reader, I am saying Afternoon Raga is a very mediocre book. But Penguin published it back then.
Right. So let's turn that same argument around, right? So which is that why shouldn't a publishing house act as a private enterprise and basically choose the sort of books or authors it will publish? Why is it necessary for them to give intellectual space to any and every person, right? As a private enterprise, why can they not make that selection then?
No, they can, but then they choose to be a Communist Party outlet if they want to be. वो तो कर ही रहे थे ना, like EPW, it publishes only article of a particular bent. So you know that this is EPW and they're only publishing this particular ideology.
They can.
वो तो पता है ना.
They can publish whoever they want. They can't stop anybody else. They can't.
That is the point. That is the point.
Cabalizing the impact. That is not okay. That cannot be allowed. You cannot put pressure on publishers to not publish. You cannot put pressure on bookstores and your distribution system to not, keep those books or distribute those books. So that happens. It just doesn't stop. Nobody has anything to do if a Penguin wants to publish all, far left authors. It's their problem. But they cannot stop others. That whole cabal can't work freely and stop others from being published or their books from being distributed. Basically, they cannot deny others a level playing field. See, the whole sales thing comes back to here. Why are they so nervous? Because they know that these books will sell a lot more than theirs, and then they will be marginalized in the publishing industry because we are an open, liberalized economy. So whichever book does well will find a place on the front to this thing, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And what they don't understand also, what many publishing houses don't understand also, is that they operate in their own insular circles of luteins, Khan market, whatever you may want to call it, where they think in this rarefied atmosphere where they'll see the same people who come for their book launches, the same people who come for the Lit Fest, the same people who come for the award functions. As Shekhar Gupta, somebody whom I don't agree with, like 99.99.99%. But that cut the clutter that he did on this issue, where he deliberately tried to misrepresent Sanjay Dixit, Anand Ranganathan, and Sanjeev Sanyal's tweets. That besides the point. But the one point that he made in the cut the clutter thing was quite spot on. Basically, he said that it's a gang of 150 people, and you go to any literary function in Delhi, that out of those 150 people, you'll find 80 people at every function. Because wahi chahte hain. They are the ones who control everything, right? But they don't realize that the India of today is a different entity. It's a different beast. In today's India, you can actually, if you're determined enough, you can self-publish a book and you can sell it in like literally more than any book that these publishing houses will ever publish. And then you can establish yourself so that then suddenly publishing houses will find you attractive and they will embrace you, which is what happened with Amish. It also happened with one of the, what's his name, Ravinder Kumar or something, right? He writes romances. He was an Infosys techie, but he's a bestseller. I have seen him at one of the book signing events at one of the bookstores. And the kind of line that was there amongst young people to get the book signed by this guy, it's phenomenal. I have never seen that kind of a line for any of these big writers. Normally, if Crossword has a function which has one of those celebrated writers, you will not find more than 25 people in audience. That's a fact. But for this guy, just to get the book signed, there was a line of some 200 people outside Crossword. And this I've seen with my own eyes. I forget the name of this guy. But he self-published his first book. And then now, of course, I think Rupa or Penguin publishes it. But that is the story. India is hungry. India is hungry for good content. India is willing to pay. India is willing to read books which identify with their aspirations. It's a new India. See, it's changing slowly, one step at a time. Till 5 years ago, before Republic and Times Now, which were the major news channels which gave an equal amount of space to people with a dharmic, Indic, nationalist ideology? You had very few, right? You had the benchmark of journalism was nepotism and Dynasty TV, where they would call the same people and they would call one guy with a differing point of view, basically to butcher him or her. But now it's changing. So slowly, it's like bastion by bastion, their strongholds are falling down. And that is what they're not liking it very much. And that is why this kind of insecurity, this kind of fear, this kind of knee-jerk reactions.
Right. So let me ask a more fundamental question to the both of you, right? We've discussed this, for greater part of this debate now. In your opinion, do you think freedom of expression or speech is absolute? And if it's not, then what do you think are reasonable guardrails? I know, the Constitution says public order, morality, and so on. But some of this could be subjective and arbitrary, right? It depends on, what a particular government or an agency looks at it, how they look at it, and they can use it differently for different people at different circumstances. Mm-hmm. So if you could sort of take your view about it, we could maybe start with Abhijit ji, and then Shefali ji, you could also add.
No, reasonable guardrails is only one, that it should not be an incitement to violence for anybody. It should not. You cannot publish a book and say that we need mass massacre of whoever, whether it's Rohingyas or Kashmiri Pandits or whoever. Apart from that, I don't see why there should be any impositions on freedom of speech.
So let's say if you disagree with a line of thought, and somebody maybe does a Netflix series on it, or like a publishing house publishes a book, what would be how do you think you're going to support it or discourage that?
No, simply they should respect the law of the land. If your book is breaching that law of the land, then it will be challenged.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, Shefali ji, you were saying something.
Yeah, see, my point is, Abhijit said that a book or any web series or a movie or anything, or even a social media post, should be the only reasonable safeguard should be that it should not incite violence, right? The point is that incitement to violence is not necessarily a result of that particular book or idea being published. It is a result of who is reacting to it. Like, for example, what happened in Naveen's case and what happened in Heer Khan's case.
Yeah,
They did the same thing, no, both of them.
absolutely.
But who took to the streets and who burnt down police stations? Who burnt down public property? Who burnt down private vehicles? The act was the same. Naveen insulted allegedly religious icon of a particular religion, and Heer Khan insulted icon of a particular religion, right? But the Hindus approached it with a proper law and order kind of situation. They went to the cops, they got arrested. There were no mobs baying for her blood in the streets. There were no attacks on police stations or whatever. Whereas what happened in KG in Bangalore, everybody knows, and it was scary. And the same thing is happening in Malmo. So the point is not that. We're talking about the law of respecting the law of the land. That is very much true. But then again, I think the situation is a little more nuanced than whether you stand absolutely for freedom of expression or not. I mean, I wouldn't be able to say
No,
that I absolutely stand
Shefali,
for freedom of expression.
Shefali, yes, very small, quick clarification. By incitement to violence, I mean call for violence. So,
Okay, okay.
yeah, call for violence. So, Naveen's post did not call for violence, yeah. Nor
Yeah,
did, Kamlesh Tiwari calling the prophet gay is not a call for violence. You cannot
that's right.
interpret it as call, you know,
Yeah,
there is a law of the land, and it should, if you have a problem with that, then please file a case as it was done in Heer Khan's this one case.
fair
While,
enough.
as Shefali rightly said, in Naveen's case, or even in Denmark yesterday, just look at, I mean, was there a call for violence? No. The call
True.
for violence was done by the mullahs.
Yeah, as always.
Right. So this has been a fascinating discussion, plenty to think about. A lot of ideas being seeded here, and I'm sure that people will refer back to this discussion when they talk about these things in the future. So again, thank you so much for joining us, Abhijit ji and Shefali ji. Pleasure hosting you on the Bharatvaarta podcast.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Roshan.
much, Roshan.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for tuning in. This podcast was brought to you by the team at Bharatvaarta. If you liked this podcast, then don't forget to share, subscribe, and rate us on your favorite platforms. We're available on Anchor, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Breaker, YouTube, and a host of other platforms. We started Bharatvaarta to facilitate long-form discussions on politics, policy, and culture. We don't necessarily endorse anything that was said in this episode. If you do wish to offer us any feedback on the content or anything else, do reach out to us on social media or get in touch with us on our website, www.bharatvarta.in. The links are in the description below. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and Jai Hind.